Is this cut of beef better than brisket? In this video, I'm cooking a chuck roast like a brisket, and I'm going to see how it tastes compared to an actual brisket. Will it be better? We're gonna find out in this video, so let's get smoking. Welcome to the Smoke Lab, guys. My name is Steve Gao, and in this show, we do crazy barbecue experiments you would never do at home, so you can learn from my trial and error. Chuck roast is known as poor man's brisket, and I think that might be a misnomer these days. When I purchased the chuck roast for this video, it was on par with the price of brisket pound for pound, and when I talked to viewers in various different states, they said that chuck roasts are often more expensive than brisket in their particular area. So maybe chuck roast is less expensive than brisket in your area, and you can call it poor man's brisket, but for most people, I think a better name is brisket alternative, or maybe I can't believe it's not brisket. Actually, that's a good idea for a thumbnail. So if it's not cheaper than brisket, it darn well better taste better, and that's what I'm gonna test out in this video. I'm going to cook a chuck roast like I do my briskets, and I'm gonna compare it to a brisket and see if it tastes any better. So I'm starting with a 10-pound chuck roast. I wanted to get something similar in size to a brisket if it's going to be a fair test, and I'm slathering it with Golden Mountain seasoning sauce. Then I'm rubbing it with Smoke Trails barbecue brisket rub, giving it a healthy rubbing on all sides, and then it's going to sit on the counter for about 30 minutes. 30 minutes later, I'm placing the chuck roast, on my Oklahoma Joe's Longhorn offset smoker with a large water pan to the right, and I'm gonna maintain temps around 250 degrees Fahrenheit for the next 5 hours. Every 30 minutes or so, I'm rotating the chuck roast to help it cook more evenly. Unlike a brisket, a chuck roast is basically a giant tube of meat, so there's no thicker point end to keep towards the fire, so it needs to be rotated periodically to cook evenly. I'm also spraying it with equal parts water, apple cider vinegar, and Golden Mountain seasoning, and after 4 hours, I'm bumping temps up to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. 7 hours in, the chuck roast looks like this, pretty briskety looking, and it's around 170 internal, so I'm foil boating it to help it cook more evenly and retain more moisture, and it's going to roll at 300 for another 3 hours. At the 10-hour mark, it looks like this, and yeah, I can't believe that's not brisket. It really looks like a brisket, and it's probing at around 190 to 195 internal, so just like I do with all of my briskets, I'm wrapping it in foil with clarified butter and beef tallow, and it's going to go in the holding oven at 150 for the next 18 hours. Don't worry if you don't have a commercial holding oven, you probably don't. You can just use your regular oven, or you can use your sous vide machine, or any number of other options to hold your barbecue at 150 for 18 hours. All right, guys, I have the chuck roast here. It's been unwrapped after holding for 18 hours at 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Really nice looking bark, as dark as a brisket, and I do have a brisket here as a comparison, and you can see that it looks pretty similar other than the shape. They both have the same color of bark. This has a nice, deep, dark textured exterior, so I'm interested to see how it's gonna look on the inside. What I'm gonna do first is just cut a slice of this brisket, and I'm just going to use that as a comparison for taste and fat rendering and flavor. So I'll put that to the side. Now let's cut into this guy. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm just going to slice it right in half. It's slicing pretty easily. Let's take a look at it. Wow, that looks really good actually. Look at that. I'll just squeeze it a little bit. Man, that's a lot of juices coming out of there. Show you guys the other side. It looks exactly like brisket, it's just a different shape. So that's really interesting. I'm just gonna take a slice. It falls apart a little bit more easily than brisket because I think there's more muscle groups in here. But look at that. That's a nice looking slice. Give you guys a close up. I'll pull it apart. Pulls apart super easily. Let's give it a taste. It's very similar to brisket in terms of texture. It's got a lot of rendered collagen, a lot of rendered fat, and that makes it really similar to brisket. The difference is it tastes 100% more beefy. It's got this intense beef flavor that is miles above what you get from brisket. And the other thing I'm picking up on is it tastes a little bit more like a beef roast, almost like roast beef, but it's a lot more beefy. And this particular chuck has a little bit of a, I don't know how to describe it. It's not gamey, but it's like a really intense beefy flavor that is just different than brisket. That's the only way I can put it in words. I mean, it's just a different flavor profile. I'm gonna take some of the bark here. Let's get a nice chunk of this bark and rendered fat. The bark is really good. The only difference is on a brisket, you get the fat cap, and on a chuck roast, it doesn't have that fat cap that a brisket has, so it doesn't have that rendered fat on the outside that really creates that awesome eating experience. So now I'm gonna try out one of these brisket slices and do a comparison. So I'll pull this guy apart. It's perfectly cooked. So the brisket has a sweeter beef flavor, but it's more subdued than the chuck roast. It's not as an intense of a beef flavor as the chuck roast was. It's got a better mouthfeel and flavor because it has rendered fat from the fat cap that just hits the sides of your tongue and just hits all of those taste buds. So in my opinion, the brisket tastes better than the chuck roast, and I don't think that's very surprising. Brisket is the king of barbecue for a reason. But chuck roast, for the price and for what it is, it tastes very similar to brisket, and it gives you the same kind of eating experience, same bark, same flavor profile. It's just a little bit more of an intense beefy flavor. There's a little bit more intramuscular collagen and fattiness going on within it and different muscle groups, so you don't really get as good slices. There were some kind of off flavors in it that were really intense and beefy. But other than that, it's really good. Look at this, guys. Look how juicy that is. It looks very similar to a brisket. It's just a little bit different. It's got a little bit more fat here, a little bit more collagen and seam fat, different muscle groups, but otherwise, it's pretty good. So thanks so much for watching, guys. If you have any more ideas for Smoke Lab experiments, let me know in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe to the Oklahoma Joe's YouTube channel, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, happy smoking.